My guest this week is Ross McMillan, mortgage advisor at Advantage Home Finance, and we're talking about his journey from estate agency into the mortgage services world. Welcome back to the Mortgage Broker Broadcast with me, Craig Skelton. Join me every week while we're developing your knowledge to help you build a successful mortgage broker business. So my guest this week is Ross McMillan, and the reason why I invited Ross onto the podcast was that a lot of people want to hear from people that have experienced what they're thinking about doing or have done or want to do. And so Ross is going to talk about his journey, what his challenges face, what his learning's been, etc., from moving from the world of estate agency and then moving into the world of mortgage broking. So welcome to the podcast, Ross. How are you?
Extraordinary, Craig. How are you?
Extraordinary. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So extraordinary is like quite a statement straight into a podcast, Ross. I'm extraordinary. So good. I'm glad you're extraordinary. So that is good news. So yeah, I'm good. Very, very good. Thank you very much. So thank you for being part of the podcast and being a guest on the podcast. And I know we've sort of had a bit of a conversation on LinkedIn and messaging before, and just to really, like, the idea is like a lot of people that are listening to the podcast are either thinking about becoming self-employed or are in self-employed and wanting help, or might be thinking I'm going for like employed self-employed or becoming a broker full stop. So they're like totally out of the industry. And I think one thing that comes out quite a lot is that people want to hear from people that have been brave enough to make that jump and do something that they're possibly thinking about doing or maybe look to do today or in the future. And I think people really sort of do want to listen to people that have actually done what they're thinking about doing. So I really appreciate your time and being on the podcast today and taking the time out, to be fair, Ross. I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
No, well, I appreciate the invite, Craig, and that's definitely the case. I mean, I've certainly benefited from listening to your podcast amongst others, and I think it is the broker stories that I find most useful, and everybody's different and got different backgrounds and different routes and different challenges. So it's something we might touch on, but it's a big difference between the estate agency world that I came from and the mortgage broker world is the sharing of ideas and the kind of ethos that comes with that. It's fantastic to be part of that, and it's refreshing from perhaps where I've been in the past. So delighted to be on. And to add to my media background, I was on Homes Under the Hammer 3 times, so this is me adding to my CV.
I'm not quite sure the Mortgage Broker Broadcast is up there with the Homes Under the Hammer or anything like that, but yeah, you can add it to your CV and add it to your repertoire, mate. Absolutely fine. So you've just alluded a little bit there about, and obviously I've said as well about your background. So do you want to just explain your sort of journey in the sort of the estate agency into mortgage services world and go from there?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, I'm in Glasgow. I'm born and bred in Glasgow, and still live here with my wife and my 3 kids, who are frighteningly almost all teenagers now. And thinking about this podcast is actually scary to think. It's actually about 30 years since I left school, so I've got 30 years of work experience. But I'm not going to bore you or anybody else with every nook and cranny of that. But probably like most people, the first 10 years I was kind of finding my way. I did a few business development roles. I was not in financial services, actually in book selling for a while, and I did have a brief encounter with uni life, perhaps being a teacher, a primary teacher, but that wasn't for me. So roughly about 2003, my first child was actually on the way, and that's when I had got a clearer picture of what I wanted to be and where I wanted to go with my life and my career, and that was property. So initially I was with a self-employed agent in the south side of Glasgow, which was straight in there, just learning the ropes, effectively every aspect of it. And it was 2 great guys that are still in business now, and a really good business to get a grounding in. I then moved into the corporate world, and I was what was known as a valuer for several years with probably the biggest corporate agent in the UK, one of their brands. So it was under the Countrywide Group, as people will probably be aware of. and I was across 3 different branches in the Central Belt there, and I was also involved in helping train new recruits to the business as well. I then moved into, I became latterly a partner, an invested partner in a fairly well-known private agency, tended to work towards the higher end of the housing market with several branches. And yeah, I was invested in that, and I kind of thought that's what I'd be doing forever. But then about 3 years ago, I turned 45, and I thought, I just don't want to do this anymore. I can't see myself doing this forever. I'm kind of tired of it. I was working long hours. I was stressed. I just wasn't happy, and I just felt, this is why am I doing this? What's the point of kind of wasting my life in some respects doing something that at the moment is just not making me happy? It was a big thing, and there was a bit of angst around it, and financially I'd lost money that I'd invested in the business, whatever, but definitely the best decision I ever made, because I'm happier than I've ever been now. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I've got a new lease of life, that and I feel quite empowered that you can make changes as well, because everybody was astonished that I basically gave up a career of 15 years in a estate agency without a master plan. I didn't exactly know what I was going to be doing, but I knew I didn't want to do that. But I gave it up. I walked away. People thought I was very brave or stupid, but having done that now, nothing really scares me, because change is just something that you can manage and you can take in your stride, and I've hopefully proven that. And there might be more changes to come, who knows? But so yeah, I was 45. I was your typical, for most of my adult life, I've been wearing a 3-piece suit, and I've been your stereotypical estate agent, and I'm sitting chatting to you in a polo shirt and jeans. So quite a bit's changed in that period. So I took a wee break, just 2 or 3 months, to kind of get my head together and have a break, and then I hadn't actually at that stage decided mortgages or whatever. I knew it'd be financial services. I was considering an IFA. I was looking into that, and I was kind of going down that route, but it seemed pretty obvious with my background and my experience that mortgages was the thing I should specialise in. So I went down to Manchester. I did an intensive course down there, and in a couple of weeks I had my CMAP. I also did my CRER, or my equity release qualification, as well, because I had a kind of interest in that sector that had been growing as well. I had all that. I was planning to move into the role that I'm in just now, in a mortgage, just a straightforward kind of purchase-based mortgage advice role, but an opportunity was presented to me shortly after I qualified from a firm in Glasgow that was quite a young, immature firm that was actually specialising in second charge lending. And I had the opportunity. I spoke to the CEO for that. As I say, it was a young, immature company. I could see lots of things that I could bring to it beyond just the mortgage advice. And so I was actually managing a team of 3 there when I started, straight off the bat, if you like, whilst still getting to grips with the advice process. They were a DA firm, and there was lots of things that we were moving forward with. So it was, but I really was enjoying that. It was exciting. It was a new company that I could help become better, I suppose. But unfortunately, then COVID came along, and that kind of put paid to that business in that particular form, and it was quite evident that I wasn't going to move forward that way. So it'd always been my intention to go self-employed at some stage and kind of go out and moan to some extent. So COVID kind of just expedited that, and I looked at maybe going with a DA firm, or I looked at networks, and I'd always been quite impressed with Primus specifically, and then what they've been doing in social media and things. So I got in touch with Primus. Was there any firms in Scotland looking for somebody? And almost a year ago to the day, I joined the firm I'm with now, an Advantage Home Finance, and I never looked back. Love it. And that's my kind of feel. I was trying to keep it brief, but that's pretty much it.
No. To be fair, I'm not. All it's been good because I've been busy making notes here in terms of, and just bullet points of just things that you're sort of saying of, like, with regards to, because I had a similar sort of experience. It wasn't, some people said to me you had a midlife crisis or whatever. I was 40. I was 45 when I looked to go self-employed, left the corporate world behind. I worked in the corporate world for a long time, and I just sat there and I was just like reminiscing, and it was good for me to think, actually, I was 45. I was sat there thinking, am I really going to do this for the rest of my life? Am I going to be in this sort of corporate bubble and not really, and just be doing this of these like progression? No, I didn't want that, and just other things going on. And I was in mortgage services, so it just wasn't. So everything you're talking about, I'm busy making notes, because absolutely sort of all the things you're sort of saying about, was I being brave or stupid? You've gone through that emotion, which we'll talk about, and you've done it, and it's sort of really interesting to hear in such a short space of time that journey. But that journey makes sense in terms of people going from building their career in estate agency and then moving on to financial services, which is what a lot of estate agents do. They do move into financial services like mortgage services or whatever the case may be, after they've sort of built a career up, whether it's in a corporate world or not in a corporate world. So yeah, it's like you say, it's like a big decision that you've made. And I think the other thing as well that like I'm taking from that is that you've taken the sort of COVID. I speak to so many people that have sort of thought like COVID sort of either made people or broke people. And I think there's so many people that have become mortgage brokers in the COVID world, gone in it and then left fairly quickly and doing things nothing mortgage related, not FS related or anything like that, and gone to do totally different things. So it wasn't right for them. But you've sort of seen COVID as an opportunity to think, ultimately, I wanted to go self-employed at some stage. It's just thrown you into the realms of self-employed because COVID's made you sort of think that way, and you've taken that opportunity rather than thinking, oh, like the world's about to end, and the negative side of that really.
No, for sure. I mean, I think people have, obviously it's been a tough time for all sorts of people in all sorts of scenarios. And but in fairness, I was furloughed for kind of 3 months from the March to roughly July, but I knew what the outcome was going to be of that. I was using that time to establish what my options were. But I wasn't fearful of going self-employed at all. I mean, I had been self-employed way back when I first started in the estate agency as well, but it's different now than it was then. But I could certainly see the opportunity. But equally, you've got to be realistic about it. And I had realistic expectations as to not earning any money for a period of time. But I think that if you're starting any business, and that's the reality of it. And if you go in thinking otherwise or being told otherwise, then you're being ridiculous about that. I don't think that's how you need to view it. And we might touch on this at some point, but I view this very much as my business, and I've always viewed, even in my employed roles, I've tended to have a kind of overhead view from a business strategy point of view, and I treat it that way even when I was employed, about knowing the numbers and knowing how that all fits together and having processes and things. So yeah, it's definitely an opportunity. And the network that I became part of was quite aggressive in that period to grow. They were supporting firms and individuals. I'm sure they weren't unique in that, but they were quite prominent in let's adapt. And I think the benefit from a mortgage side of point of view, and for advisors and for FS, is it has definitely leveled the playing field for everybody in the way that we're now dealing with clients, not necessarily face to face, all either Zoom or phone calls or whatever else, and that's kind of what people expect in every aspect of their life now. But in the mortgage side of things, nobody's really going to be willing to wait 2 weeks for an appointment in a branch or anything like that. So it's changed, and that definitely gives opportunities for everybody. And of course, criteria is changing not so much now, but certainly over the past 12 months, was changing every hour, never mind every day. So what you knew a month ago is of little relevance today. And again, for people thinking about coming into the mortgage world who might be fearful of the lack of experience as a mortgage advisor, I don't pay much kudos to that. I think experience comes with the job to an extent, but in terms of mortgage criteria and how lenders are looking at things, that is always changing. So nobody knows it all, and you never will.
No. No, I totally agree with you. I think that's the thing, is that it's a very good point that it leveled the playing field, which it did from the inexperienced and the experienced advisors. It totally did. The COVID changes and the criteria every minute, every hour, every day, kind of that you talk about. It did level the playing field, and I think that it's. I always like I do talk about that, but where that advisors that are looking to get into this, and they think, right, well, I know everything about my role now. I know everything about it inside out, back to front, and I'm okay doing and that's what I want to be as a mortgage broker. I want to know everything about it, everything inside out, back to front. That's just physically impossible. You can't, as a mortgage broker, that is physically impossible to know your job inside out, back to front. The trick is nowhere to look, absolutely, because you just can't know everything, can you? Like, I think, and you realize that fairly quickly.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there is lots of tools out there that people will be aware of, or that help. It's not, again, going back to my estate agency days, at one stage we only knew, we had a book that told us what everything had sold for, but it wasn't available online. Like, people couldn't find out what the next door neighbour sold for. They didn't have any idea, so we could use that information as we chose, kind of thing. Whereas that's all out there now, and in the mortgage sense, there's tools that will allow you to at least narrow down lenders' criteria for individual circumstance. So I think the biggest challenge for anybody starting out, or well, CMAP, as we're all well aware, is it's what you require to come into the industry, but it's virtually useless as an actual practical tool. I mean, it's just, when do you ever discuss open-ended investment trusts, whatever, a big chunk of that? But it's good that we're regulated, and it's good that qualifications are required, because it shows a bit of commitment and ability, I suppose, to get through fairly difficult tests, whatever, and get through all that, and dedication to that. But it doesn't teach you the job, which arguably the mortgage side of things is a relatively small part of that. Certainly on a self-employed basis, it's the lead generation, it's the managing your own time, it's processes, it's all of that is a bigger part than simply what's the best rate for that individual circumstance. So
yeah, and that is really sort of refreshing to hear, that you sort of see that as the lead. Like you said, it's not just about where to place the case or getting my CMAP. It's about lead generation. It's about the protection side of things as well, and learning the protection side of things, and protection. You've got so many different things to worry about from that point of view of not just it's okay knowing the criteria back to front and knowing everything about, but then if you've got no clients, that's irrelevant. If you've got no leads coming in, you can be the best mortgage advisor, mortgage broker in the world, but if you've got no leads coming in, no clients coming through the door, then it's just pointless, because you can't put that into practice, what you learn is and what your knowledge is. So it's a good point.
Definitely, it's really important. Yeah.
So there's a couple of bits on there that I just wanted to go back to, in terms of really sort of taking you back a little bit and giving your sort of estate agency experience. You've had some understanding of what a mortgage broker does and the world, a little bit of a mortgage broking, because you will work with a mortgage broker in an estate agency, generally speaking. But what was that? Was there like one moment, or like where you thought, you know what, that's what I want to do. I want to be a mortgage broker. Was there ever that moment to think that's where the future lied for you?
The honest answer is probably the exact opposite. Certainly, I mean, latterly, the firm that I was a partner with, and part of their USPs was they don't have financial services within the organisation, so they're quite unique in some respects. But obviously, as part of the Countryway Group and corporate estate agency, then FS is a massive part of their business, and to some extent, the most important part, you could possibly argue. So I always had a really good relationship with the mortgage brokers that were in the branches that I worked with. But it never really, I wasn't that interested in I suppose I could say, like most valuers in a estate agency, we all have egos and we all think our job's the most important and nobody else's really matters and it's all about us. And the mortgage broker, that was just like, oh, well, that's just computer says no. Which I completely appreciate now is very unfair. But I think in corporate, mortgage advice, it's a slightly different model and it's a different kind of setup as well. But part of what I bring as a mortgage advisor now is kind of both sides of the fence. So I feel that that is definitely my niche. I mean, I tend to specialise with first-time buyers specifically because I can take them through the whole buying process, every aspect of it, and I know it inside out. I know I've got lots of contacts and insider knowledge, if you like. So that's a real USP for me as an individual beyond just the mortgage advice. And I think it's a combination of the two that's good, because my experience in general in the estate agency was that there was a divide between the two areas, that you get really good estate agents who didn't understand the mortgage side, and you get really good mortgage advisors in terms of getting people a mortgage and getting the rate, but not necessarily understanding the estate agency or the actual buying process. So obviously I can now bring those two worlds together, and I feel that's specifically where I can benefit clients. But so no, there was never any aspiration to be that. And I kind of regret that, because I feel that I have found a vocation that I could have been doing for longer, and could have contributed more towards it, and be at a different stage in things. But I definitely have more respect for the people that I used to think were just a pain, nagging me for appointments every day. So whom I'm still friends with, I hasten to add. But
what's the saying? What goes around comes around, kind of thing. So
yeah, for sure.
But you're not on your own with that regarding the estate agency, because that is my background. I spent sort of 10 years a little bit longer in estate agency mortgage services. I did work for Countrywide, south of the border, and the things you're talking about, I get, because the valuer, the lister, the market appraiser, the manager, however it's cooked up, like they were the most important person in the branch. The mortgage broker thought they were the most important brand in the branch, and where you got unison and they both worked well together, generally found that that was the success, working together where they were both working hand in hand and could help each other out massively. So I'm a mortgage broker, I'd have hot buyers, I knew like who the people were, how much they were going to want to pay up to in this area. I got decision in principles for them. And that's where that's what I was always promoting to the lister or the valuer. So I say, look, work with your mortgage broker, because they know who the people, like they know who are out there looking within the price range. So if you're going to go to a house and then with these hot buyers, I'm not saying you're just going to win it on that, but you've got a fighting chance to win it. But then that's when you then come into your own of your personality, because people buy from people. So the homes that you've listed, the homes that you've sold, came on with you because they bought into you. So it's like now you've got that, because you've got both sides of the fence now to work to your own benefit, because you've seen what a mortgage broker does, you understand the estate agent side of things. That's great that you've sort of created that niche and that you are sitting on both sides of it, because that's the big thing about it. You're not just a mortgage broker, and we talk about that a lot of this firm, because that's the world that I've been brought up in as well, is that you can't just be a mortgage broker. People don't want a mortgage. Absolutely not. People hate this, boring. Who wants to talk about finance? Who wakes up today thinking, I'm going to talk about the best rate is 0.99% with oh my God, it's so boring. But start talking about homes and houses and aspirations from that point of view. That's more exciting. So as a broker, because you've got that experience on both sides, you will talk about both sides of things, which gives you a far greater chance of being successful as a mortgage broker, because you're talking about both things rather than just going, oh, the best deal today is 0.99% with HSBC. And this is who cares? Who does? People do. I get that people do, but it's just not the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, is that.
No, definitely not. And I think it just comes naturally for me, because I'm experienced, to match people to properties and to try and do that for them. So part of what I tend to do for people is I'll be looking out for them as well. So if I'm having a conversation and they say, well, I'm hoping to have a 1-bedroom flat in a particular area of Glasgow or whatever else, well, one, I can speak to agents in the area that I know and say, have you got anything that might fit the bill? And the market's really competitive just now, so it's not as if there's any insider dealing or anything, but at least it's giving them opportunities to maybe look at things that they might hadn't seen or hadn't thought about. And so I'll send links to my clients all the time. Have you seen this one? Have you done that? And likewise, I encourage them to send anything they've got their eye on to me, so I can give them an opinion potentially, or at least give them my insights of what I know about that area, what I know about the saleability of that flat, or anything else that I happen to know about it. And often I might even know the surveyor that's done the home report, or indeed to the agent that's selling it, which can sometimes be handy. So it's very much, when I'm speaking to clients initially, of course, there's the regulatory stuff that we need to touch on in terms of disclosure documents and this, that, and other, and how our panel and how we get paid and all the kind of stuff that you got to cover off. But that's a small part of the conversation, and as indeed is actually mortgages. It's more about, well, this is how I can help you as a whole, which I think is fairly unique, and that I've got that background that they generally, I tell them, I mean, it's all over my social media, it's all over when I speak to people that I'm a former estate agent, so it's not hidden. I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. So they know that I'm speaking from experience, and usually after chatting to me, they pick up on that straight away. And it does mean I get WhatsApp messages at 10:30 on a Sunday night when they're on Rightmove and they've seen the latest thing. But I encourage that, and that's absolutely fine. So I'm happy to help people get into their first home, or I mean, I do specialise in first-time buyers, but I help anybody that's looking to buy a property. I've got a couple of buy-to-let landlords I'm putting applications in for this afternoon. So it's not just first-time buyers, but in general, they're the ones that get the greatest benefit from the experience that I can give them that they've not had yet.
Definitely. I think the thing with that there is that shows commitment. If you've got a client texting you at 10:30 at night on a Sunday night when they're sat on Rightmove and they're WhatsApping you about it, you've got that client. That client is yours. That client's not going to go anywhere else. And they've bought into you, what you're doing. They trust you. The relationship's there. So when they do step into an estate agent and the estate agent's trying to pinch them off, from a mortgage point of view and working with their mortgage broker while I'm working with you and things like that, they're less likely to have their heads turned, because do you know what? Ross has been with us all through this whole process. He's seen us at the start, got us an AIP, helping us find the house with what's happened at 10:30 at night. And that's the thing, that is a real big thing where brokers sometimes miss out on that because they don't want that kind of dealings, where I'm all for that. I really want clients to message me about what house they're thinking and talk about it. And I setting up Rightmove alerts and all those things that we always do. It just builds that relationship of trust between you and your client, and then they're more likely to use you than go elsewhere.
No, for sure. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a slight irony in that I kind of left the estate agency because I was working too many hours and I was non-stop. I'm probably working comparable hours now, but it doesn't feel like I'm working. And I'm also doing it when it suits me. I'm managing my own diary. I'm managing, and what harm is if I'm sending a WhatsApp now and again or whatever? There's no. I encourage it, but likewise, I might not do any work all day, but then I do a lot of work at night, and that's one of the things that I've, in terms of self-employment, has been a huge benefit. And with hindsight, is probably the kind of thing that I've always been looking for, is that freedom to do that. So I can be sitting here at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning doing stuff, but we can do that in this industry. Obviously, you're not speaking to clients at that time usually, but the other stuff round about it doesn't need to be 9 to 5. And likewise, in terms of appointments and just general client engagement, there's no rigidity as far as I'm concerned, which is what you would be getting, arguably, as certainly an estate agency-based mortgage advisor. Your kind of office hours generally, and it's a different role, which I completely respect, but it's not one that would suit me at the moment, for sure.
I think that you are getting out there the positives of being a self-employed. There's obviously always the negatives and the issues and the cons of being self-employed. However, work-life balance and sort of working, like you say, it's your own diary. I think that's one thing that brokers tend to struggle with sometimes, especially when they're coming from a corporate or coming from an employed, structured banking, building society world. And I'm the first one. This is something I struggled with at the beginning, was there's just a structure to my day. So if I was doing something that wasn't work related at 10 o'clock in the morning, I felt guilty. I was like, well, you should be at work, Craig. You should be at work right now. Why are you doing this? And that was the big thing. And like advising in the firm that I run, they had the same thing of, they said some took to it like a dug towards it. Some were like sort of, yeah, structured, like, no way. This is what I'm doing with my kids now. I've got that client at 6 o'clock tonight. I'm taking this time now to do this. And I've got that sign up at 9 o'clock tonight. And so some people just took to it straight away. I just struggle with the routine because I'm a bit of a creature of habit and I like the routine. And my day is now routine to a certain extent. But I just felt guilty. I don't know. And Carly-Ann, who was on the podcast a while ago, who I've worked with at a large corporate, she felt the same way of, well, I should be working now. I can't go shopping now, because what if a client sees me and they're thinking, why is she not at work? It's like 11 o'clock in the morning. Why is Carly-Ann not working on a Tuesday morning kind of thing? And that was the same thing for me, whereas now, I think it took me about 6 months, and like now it's like, yeah, I'm absolutely fine with this. This is when I'm like, my diary is my own. If I need to do this right now, I'm going to do that right now, and then I'll work later tonight. And I think it's just having a list of tasks and getting them done. So if you can if you've got a list of tasks, you've got 10 tasks to do, and you're up at 6 o'clock in the morning in front of your desk, and you're done by 12 o'clock because you've worked smart, hard, and got those done. Well, you've done your task for the day. Go out in the afternoon, reward yourself, and enjoy it, kind of thing. And it's just having that work-life balance, which can sometimes be a distraction, because when you're too ingrained, I've worked longer than you. I'm just beating you by a few years. When you talked about the numbers, Ross, I'm thinking, I'm 49 now, and I started school. I left school at 16 straight into work. So I've been working 33 years. I've been sat in front of a screen or sat in front. So it's just, that was my world. I was used to being work at this time, setting off from this time, and you just structure your day. Whereas now it's just a bit of a free for all. But you soon get your head up and think, do you know what? What a great way to be. That this is one of the benefits of being self-employed.
No, for sure. I mean, I think like you, there was a bit of an evolution towards that from my point of view. It wasn't immediate, but again, I was maybe coming from a slightly different position in that as a valuer in a state agency, you're kind of out and about. I wasn't in an office very often. I was in the morning to get moaned at for not having mortgage appointments, whatever, and then and to avoid the price change chat or whatever that the client that was wanting that we had to have those difficult conversations with, and then I'd be off to a diary that had been booked for me that I would probably be moaning about the time that I had in between appointments. And anybody listening to this who's worked with me will appreciate those kind of comments. But I liked my diary a certain way. But anyhow, I would be out, and that was me for the day, basically, and then I'd appear again the next morning. So I was coming from a slightly different kind of standpoint, but and actually when I took the employed role with the second charge firm and I was office-based, I actually probably struggled to adjust to that initially more than the flexibility of my own diary kind of thing. So it was, being in an office I was kind of caged tiger type thing, but I've certainly adjusted to that now, and well, I can do what I like now within reason, and ultimately I'm accountable to myself. That's what self-employment brings.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely. I think that's the thing with it is you either enjoy that office environment, and that's where people sometimes struggle going self-employed, because they're not in that self-employed environment where they like I sit in my office on my own, if I'm at home on my own, if I'm working at home, or like you sat in there, so you've not got three other brokers behind you, or you've not got a lister behind you and a negotiator and an administrator, and like your whole, it's just, you work, it is quite lonely sometimes, and that's not for everybody. But I think you quickly realize, and you have to, whether it is for you or not, once you've just done it and got on with it. And I enjoy like working on my own, because you can just sometimes switch everything off, turn your phone off, put an out of office on, and just think, right, for the next 3 or 4 hours, I need to crack on with this task and not be interrupted. So you've not got the mortgage broker coming over to you saying, why have you not booked any more appointments today, Ross? Where's my leads? Like, what valuation? Where's my vendors and all that? You can just get on with what you need to do and work smarter, I think.
No, absolutely, that's the case. I mean, there is definitely, I think the loneliness element, if you like, is if you're used to a team, a physical team, if you like, that, you know, for all we joke about everybody had their own egos and everyone else, I mean, it was a branch and we were all kind of pulling together at the end, usually. But so you kind of miss that, I guess, to some extent. But obviously in the last 18 months it's been unusual, but there's been plenty of opportunities to have, I mean, conversations like we're having just now, or certainly within the firm that I'm in just now, there's, I think, we're 10, 11 brokers, and we have a weekly meeting where we see each other and share ideas and chat and things like that. So you've still got that if you want it, and equally networking groups if you want to go down that route. There's all sorts of things that you can fill that void with, but definitely still have the flexibility and the freedom to have your own space and your own agenda.
So we've had sort of discussion about the positive side of the work-life balance and things like that, and we know that there was no Eureka moment of waking up today thinking, I want to be a mortgage broker. And to be honest with you, I was exactly the same as you. I fell into financial services, applied for a job and then got it, and then with no experience whatsoever. And I think that tends to be how people get into mortgage broking and mortgage services. They just tend to fall into it from an estate agency or something. They're interested in property and stuff like that. So you tend to, nobody wakes up today thinking, I'm going to be a mortgage broker. Like, nobody's I don't think they have careers advisors at school anymore. I don't think they do. But if they did, I certainly never sat in front of them saying, I want to be a mortgage broker. I want to run my own mortgage broker firm. I want to be a financial advisor. People just don't. It just tends to fall into it like you have, and I did, really.
Yeah, no, that's. I think that's the case, and I don't think I've encountered anyone that's ever said, I want to be a mortgage advisor. But I mean, there is a certain type of person that will do well in it as well. And obviously my background helps and an interest in property and everything else. But I think you kind of need to like a challenge and problem solving as well. I think that the best brokers, the best people are the ones that are always looking for solutions, even when the obvious solution isn't there. If you dig hard enough, you'll probably find a solution. Or certainly for my clients, I tend to say, right, well, if there's no solution now, if you do this, this, and this, then there could be a solution in 3 months' time or whatever it is. And I think I do enjoy that's the kind of behind the scenes. That's not the client isn't really interested in how you're getting to the solution, but yeah. I actually quite enjoy that side of things as well in the background. Is like spending quite a lot of time working with lenders and individuals and asking other advisors who maybe have had similar scenarios, because no two scenarios or no two clients are the same. So, but there's a real satisfaction in finding solutions for people at the end of that they maybe didn't think was there. So I think a bit of kind of dogged determination doesn't go amiss in this job as well.
I am gonna write that down, to be fair, because that's not a word or a phrase that I've ever used before. But you're absolutely 100% right. There's no shortcuts. There's no easy. It's about finding the solution for that problem. You've got to want to do that. If somebody's becoming a mortgage broker for the first time, who are non-experienced and not in the industry, don't understand exactly what goes on behind the scenes. For every hour you spend in front of the client, there's 10 hours behind the scenes looking at getting a solution for that problem. So you've got to want to do that. If you're looking for seeing the client thinking, right, I'm going to go away now and get a quick fix, and like that's the solution, that's the answer. Yeah, sometimes there are easier answers, but generally speaking, people see brokers for a reason. It's not always the most straightforward case like you get on your course and inductions and CMAT, where you see it's a first-time buyer with 15%, with plenty of income, never had any bad issues before with credit and stuff like that. That's not the real world for brokers. So it's about people want solutions from a broker. You've got to piece it together. And I like the analogy, what you said about they may not be a solution today, but you will help them to get a solution. So there will be a solution in the future, but this is what they need to do to get to that solution kind of thing. So that's sort of not a case of tapping a few keys and computer says no and move on to the next person. It's like you're growing your brand as well by helping customers now and looking at, if you can't help them now, working with a plan with them to how they can work in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it seems ironic again that we're on the Mortgage Broker podcast, and I'm going to say this, but I kind of don't like the word broker. I prefer to see myself as a mortgage coach, if you like, and it's guiding people right the way through the journey, as I say, and coaching them like, this is what you need to do, particularly first-time buyers, but not just them. You need to get your bank statements at where you stay, and you're not at your mum's house for the last 10 years and you've not changed your bank. And whatever it happens to be, or you need to do this with your credit, you need to do that, and you need to tidy these things up. And they do all appreciate that that's all part of it. And that's the way we operate. I mean, I'm not getting paid, if you like, until they get a mortgage. So I'm invested with them as well, right the way to the point. So, and they appreciate that, and I work hard with them to get to that point. So I think it's important that people have hope, and certainly being self-employed. I mean, I guess it depends what kind of business you're in, but if it's a growth-based or a volume-based business, then yeah, they're generally, that type of advisors may be more inclined to be looking for the quick fix, and it's a different ethos, it's a different business model, and that's not one that interests me. I'm about helping everybody that I can, but I respect that I don't necessarily need to do huge volume to generate the income that works for me. So I'm more willing to spend that time than perhaps somebody else who's getting harassed to have 8 applications in that week or whatever it happens to be. I understand why, but that's not the kind of model I would be comfortable with myself.
No, I totally agree with on that. It's not, or you can do 12 appointments, you can see 15 appointments, you've done 3 sign-ups, you can do 4 a week now, and it's just not that. Being self-employed is not that. That's not certain. There are firms out there, I totally agree with that. But I think for me, it goes back to the service of the client. Everything we do is for the service of the client and the long-term thing with it. So if you're just looking for the quick wins, you won't build your long-term relationship with those clients that will keep coming back to you. Absolutely not. One thing I wanted we talked, like I said, quite positive about your transition from estate agency to mortgage broking and self-employed. What, over the past sort of like couple of years, in terms of you moving over, what's been your biggest challenge or your biggest challenges?
I think, well, I mean, it's almost a cliche now because everybody says it. Obviously, lead gen is always. I don't know that that's whether you're new or old or whatever. I think that's just the nature of probably any business actually. That lead generation, and consistent and, I suppose, controllable to some extent. Lead generation is always a kind of moving feast, and I'm certainly still working on all that. I've definitely not mastered it, but I'm working towards getting that where I'd like it to be. So lead gen's kind of difficult. I think fluctuating income is. Well, I use the term income, but I think the way I view it, because again, I stress, I think you need to look at it as a business. So I actually look at it as revenue rather than income at the moment. So in terms of income, I'm basically paying myself a nominal amount. I don't mind saying that at the moment for the first year of a business. I think in any business, like I say, if you're treating it like a business, you should be paying yourself like it's the first year of a business that you've started, irrespective of whether 1 month's up here and another month's down here. At this stage, within year 1, I don't think you can be just taking all the money. I feel like you've got to work with that, and obviously you've got a lead-in time, certainly when you first start. So, but I've got a reasonable pipeline that kicks around. But so I think that's a challenge in the first year or so, at least. Anyway, is just getting used to that fluctuation. But we kind of touched on it. I know I don't have too many negatives. That is the truth of it. There's ups and downs with individual cases and clients, but right now where I am, I feel really positive. I think, yeah, it's down to your own outlook and what you're looking to achieve from it. And I think, again, my regret is that I maybe didn't move into this industry sooner, because I completely see the opportunity now that I definitely didn't see before, both commercially and economically, if you like, but just from a personal point of view, the flexibility that's there that I just hadn't appreciated before, and the whole IFS world, how it works, and the great benefits there are to clients as well as to individuals, is something that I'd completely underestimated. So we loosely touched on there in terms of client service, but I'm not aware of any industry where you can have a client that you service well, and then you, as well as the short-term benefit, if you like, for you as a broker or a business of any income that might come from that, you're then building a kind of residual or a potential residual for the future. You're planting seeds that should still be there in 2 and 3 and 5 years' time, in the mortgage sense, for remortgages or product transfer. And as long as you service that client, then you would hope you would have that client for life. And then that's you building your business on top of the new business that you're coming in. So for those looking like it as a business, and I would urge people to do that if they're thinking self-employed, then they need to look beyond the short term. Well, that case will only earn me £300 or whatever. But that's just the start of that journey with that client. It's taking them beyond that, and seeing, and that's probably something that initially I didn't grasp, if I'm honest. There can be a tendency to kind of go for the higher fees or whatever else in terms of the bigger mortgages and stuff, but I totally don't think like that now. I see the bigger picture, and I genuinely do like to help people, so that helps, and it kind of all adds up in the end. But so yeah, not too many negatives beyond the fluctuation, and just I suppose it's a wee bit similar to the state agency in that you're prone to the vagaries of the market, and there's frustrations just now that it's difficult for people to get offers accepted. Certainly in Scotland, and I think it's UK wide, that lots of first time buyers in particular that are just struggling to get on that first step on the ladder. But it happens eventually, and they just need to keep working at it, and hopefully I can help them do that. So
yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people listen to this, like there's 3 things you talked about predominantly, which was like the lead generation, which is having a business model and having a business plan of like what is your route to market and where you're going to get you're going to get your leads from, and you've got to be adaptable with that, because things will work and things won't work, and you'll do stuff and won't do stuff, and you just got to be adaptable with your lead generation. Fluctuation in income, absolutely, that's the joys of being self-employed. So I think there is these 2 types of broker out there and 2 types of mortgage advisor out there that I speak to, that some of them very much, it's like they're saying hand to mouth. So they literally, their income is this month, they will spend that's what they will spend. If it's then this month, that's what they spend. So you've got people that like hand to mouth and working it that kind of way. But then you've got other ones that are very well organized and will just think, right, I know what my pipeline's like. I know what, like, yes, I've earned £5,000 this month, but I'm only going to take £3,000 of it because that's all I need each month. I'll just pay myself for whatever the figure is. I'm just plucking figures up, making them up. But it's then, well, I just structure myself, so then thinking, I know, well, this year I'm going to pay myself X pound per month. Next year I want to pay myself more than that, and I want to go to this pound. But then as long as they're averaging out and they can deal with the highs and lows of the fluctuation, but then they know in their savings, they just take their income gets paid in, the direct debit, standing order, whatever, each month to the outgoings account, and then that just pays the bill, just lives, and they're very well structured that way. So you do get 2 types of people that are who are self-employed, and I know like few people, I know what I'm like, I don't know what sort of other brokers are like, and it's just, they're not right or wrong, it's just however you that's how you want to live your life, and it is, like I said, there's no right or wrong with that. So but I think what you've talked about is like every broker who's thinking about doing it or has done it will think about lead generation, will think about fluctuations in revenue. But I think that the one thing that really rings true for me, and we'll talk a little bit more about long term in the future for you, but like, is you're treating it as a business. You're not just sort of seeing yourself as a mortgage broker. You're seeing this as a business that you are running within a business kind of thing. So that, and I think you have to see it that way, Ross, and well done to you for thinking that way, because you have to see it that way. You're self-employed and you're running a business within a business, so to speak.
No, I appreciate that, and I think, as I've alluded to, I've kind of always had that mindset, even when I was employed within businesses in different roles and things. I've always, like my office or my branch, whatever, I've kind of had that overview. As I say, that's just been in my nature. But I mean, you say there's no right or wrong way. I think in your first year in any business, if you're taking all the money out, that's the wrong way. Because one, you need to be reinvesting that, and I think that's another thing that if people are considering being self-employed, certainly within this industry, then and I know you've touched on this as well. I think it's important for principals of firms to be honest about the reality of it as well, that people will need to invest their own money and time, and more often than not. Depends on the structure, but they certainly need to have a bit of, it's not just going to fall in the lap, and it's not all sweetness and light, even if I've maybe portrayed it that way, because I certainly have. I mean, what I would highlight is I'm not earning the money now that I was earning before, but I'm happy to sacrifice that for the longer term, and also because of the flexibility that it gives me from a work-life point of view. But I think, yeah, if it's a business, you would be investing in it, both time and money, and people need to be aware of that before they jump into it, and not fall for you'll be earning six figures within 2 weeks of coming in, because you won't be, and you're going to get lots of leads and all the rest of it. You probably won't be unless it's a business that's structured that way. And if that's just going with your eyes open, because if you want that, then maybe you better go employed and go down that route. And just on lead gen as well, I think one of the key points I would say is do treat it like a business, and in that respect, record things, review things. Don't just try this one week and then, well, I didn't get anything from that and I'm away off on another tangent. You need to give stuff a wee bit of time and actually record it and have consistency in your process so you can do a fair comparison. I think, well, both of us have come from corporate backgrounds, so maybe it comes with that we kind of think this way, but I think you definitely need to be recording things. Your perception will often be wrong when you look at the numbers about certainly lead gen. You think, well, I've spent all this money on this, that, and other, and it's not working. And then you actually look at it and say, well, actually, that's a 10 times return on just the last two leads were rubbish, but that's your short-term perception takes away from the overall picture. So, yeah, record things and review, I think, is important to do as well.
Excellent. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the corporate background will help a lot with that. And I think for certainly for mortgage advisors, brokers that have come from that corporate estate agency, banking background, they will have that sort of thought process really. So lastly then, just Ross, before, just in terms of what does the future look like? You've talked a little bit about your see everything as a long term. So what's next for us, where you're at now? What are the plans for the future?
Well, I didn't go into this with any great master plan, and I kind of like that. For all I'm talking about planning and recording things, there isn't really a master plan. Like any new business, it's survived the first couple of years, I suppose, and make it work and lay a foundation. And I think I can confidently say that's in place. I do have, as I move into it, I kind of have ambitions to perhaps have more of my own firm to some extent, in whatever form that might be, and a bit more, if you like, ownership or legacy that comes with that, because we've talked about building a client bank and a pipeline and things like that, but where that fits within the kind of structure within financial services is something to consider, and equally from a personal branding point of view, where do we want to take things? So there's no clear vision. As I say, the short-term vision is survive and thrive, and I think in both those fronts I'm okay, and enjoying it. And actually, that's probably the short-term ambition is enjoy it, be happy. Don't be stressed by things. As I touched on, things can always change. They can always be. You can always do different things if you want to. So there's no. I've heard you talk before about you kind of went self-employed and thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? I need to go back and get a job or be employed or whatever else. And there's always solutions. There's always things. Going back to the very beginning, having made the changes that I did 3 years ago, nothing scares me in that respect. So the future's bright. I'm just not entirely sure of what specifically it's going to be.
There's nothing wrong, Ross. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. When I've set the business up, I spent hours, working hard on a business plan. And I think within the first week, it was ripped up and thought, right, do you know what? I know where I know where I'm going, but I need to be adaptable. I think the two things you said there, like one thing is adaptable that you've used quite a few times as a word, and I think that is something you have to be. Being self-employed as a mortgage broker, you've got to be adaptable. Absolutely 110%. And then the other one was survive. And I think you're right in terms of the infancy of what you're doing and where you're going, then it's just about survival and adapting to survive. But you're seeing this as a long-term thing that you will make sure you win on it, and no doubt that you will, given that your overall attitude and behavior towards the business and you and like I said, the thing is, what people forget is just enjoy it. Like, there are so many, you're trying to hit a goal and you're trying to hit a business plan, you forget about actually enjoying the ride to then achieve that target and goal. And I think because then you hit that goal, there'll be another goal then and another goal then, and all you're doing is chasing goals. Whereas then, and it's important to have goals, absolutely, but just enjoy getting there, enjoy the ups and downs of the roller coaster ride of being a mortgage broker.
Definitely, and just being a human being, being a mortgage broker is just like, there's no point being. I've been there. I've been unhappy. I've been stressed by my profession, and I won't let that happen again. So so I'm loving where I'm at just now, and it's just about building on that. And that's where I'm at.
Brilliant, Ross. We're going to end it on that poignant point right at the end there. So, look, I've appreciate your time. I appreciate you sort of explaining your journey, where you're at, talking about the solutions and the adaptability and all those sorts of things. You've really, I think, a lot of brokers who are either thinking about becoming brokers or estate agents moving to brokers, or what people take a lot from that, of sort of listening to your experiences and the challenges you faced and your overall outlook in terms of what you're doing. So 110%. Thank you so much for your honesty as well throughout the whole podcast recording. So thanks very much, Ross.
No, thanks, Craig. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully it's useful for some.
It certainly will be. It certainly will be, and we will get you back on in the months of wherever to come, and we'll get you back on so you can share more about your journey and stuff like that. So no doubt we will. We'll hear more about your sharing your experiences, and hopefully you're still enjoying it. So, but Bill, thank you very much.
No, thanks, Craig. I appreciate that.